gems in blood and fire. Some ships go south with amber furs and bone, to trade with those whose markets we admire, and bring back silk and silver and unknown. The amber road runs east through forest deep, through rivers wide and mountain passes cold, through sleeping towns and markets never sleep, to where the eastern empires buy and sold. The Viking trader sails as bold as war. He just brings goods instead of axe and oar. We met the eastern merchants at the bend, where two great rivers cross the grassy plain. They spread their carpets out from end to end, and showed us spices, jewels, and colored grain. We laid our amber out in rows of gold, our walrus ivory white as northern snow. They touched each piece and haggled, bought and sold, while neither side quite wanted the other to go. Trade is war conducted without blades. Both sides go home enriched in different shades. The amber came from shores along our sea, the fossilized resin of a sunken wood. A million years of time pressed into free, and golden drops that burn the way fire should. We dove the shallows when the storms had passed, and filled our sacks with gold the sea had made. Each piece a world preserved and held steadfast, a perfect insect caught in golden shade. Amber is the sunlight kept in stone, a gift the ancient forest left us lone. In Miklagarda the great city shone, with domes of gold above the marble streets. The emperor sat gleaming on his throne, and hired our swords for his palatial feats. We served as gods inside his golden door, the Varangian guard, elite and proud, and carved our runes on every marble floor, and sang our songs a little rough and loud. A Viking in the emperor's own hall still writes his runes upon the marble wall. We brought back more than silver cloth and spice. We brought back words and stories and new ways, new games to play on winter nights with dice, new songs to add to our own northern praise. The world is wide and full of different fires, each culture forged from its own iron and stone, and trade connects the separate world's desires, so none of us must face the dark alone. The amber road runs longer than the sword, and carries more than any race reward. She wept and her tears fell as drops of gold into the sea and hardened into war. She searched for all through winter, bitter cold, through every world and every shuttered door. The goddess who commands the hearts of men, who rides to war and claims the battlefield dead, who chooses half the slain again, still weeps for one who from her side has fled. Freya proves that even gods know loss, and love is always worth its golden cost. She wore the Brisingamen around her neck, the necklace forged by dwarves for 4 nights' price. She paid what was demanded without check, for beauty has its own demanding vice. Loki stole it while she lay asleep. He turned to seal and dove into the tide, but Heimdall fought him in the freezing deep and brought the necklace back to Freya's pride. The Brisingamen is worth its price and more, for beauty given freely is no whore. She taught the Aesir cider magic, hold the Vanir art of weaving fate and will, the power to see futures hot and cold, and bend the threads of destiny at will. But cider cost its users something deep, a piece of what had once been hard and sharp, a softness that would seep into the sleep and change the war god's edge to something carp. Freya gives the gods the gift of sight, but sight costs something of the warrior's mind. She rides to battle in a chariot bright, her cats pulling swift across the field. She claims her half before the day turns night, and brings them to Sesramnir's golden shield. The women warriors who die in war, the ones who chose the blade above the loom, find themselves in Freya's hall before they're placed beside the brave men in their room. Freya keeps the female warriors near. The shield maidens have nothing left to fear. She is the love inside the warrior's chest, the reason any soldier fights at all, the face that rises burning in the breast, before the final charge, before the fall. Without her none would sharpen blade or train. Without her none would sail the freezing sea. Without her all the glory and the game would have no meaning, none at all, not free. Freya's the reason we go to war, and she is what we're always fighting for. He came to Asgard with a crooked grin, half giant blood and half a silver tongue. He talked his way through every god's thick skin, and kept the halls of heaven always young. He cut the golden hair from Sif's bright head. He lost a wager and gave Thor a bride. He led the gods from bad to worse instead, and always laughed before he ran to hide. Loki is the fire that burns the plan, but fire also forges iron for man. Without the trickster, nothing new is born. Without the chaos, nothing old must break. The gods grew fat and comfortable and warm, and needed Loki to keep them awake. He stole and schemed and bargained with the dark. He made mistakes that cost the gods their price, but every scheme left somewhere a bright spark, a thread of something new and sharp and nice. The trickster is the engine of the world, the force that keeps the old ideas hurled. He fathered monsters beautiful and grim, the serpent, wolf, and queen of half-lit death. The gods tried burying each one of them, but couldn't silence Loki's children's breath. Hell rules the cold and shadow-ridden plain. The wolf will eat the sun at world's last dawn. The serpent circles Midgard's full domain, and Loki smiles at everything he spawned. A trickster's children shape the world's last day. They finish what their father said in play. They bound him finely beneath a mountain stone, with serpent venom dripping on his face. His faithful wife held up a bowl alone to catch each drop and keep him from disgrace. When she must empty what the bowl has caught, the venom lands and Loki rides in pain. The earth quakes with the agony he's brought, and men above feel tremors in the rain. Loki bound is still the world's unrest. His pain becomes the earth's eternal test. That says do something bold and wrong, that push that tips us into winter mud, that restless note inside the battle song. He is the risk we take on open sea, the gamble made when wiser men would pause, the moment when we choose to just be free and break the old and dusty rusted laws. A little Loki lives in every nose, the chaos that becomes the greatest foe. Every Viking born was born to raid. Some chose the furrow over foam and oar. Some found their battle in the honest trade of breaking frozen ground and planting more. The farmer bends to earth the way the sea demands the sailor bend beneath its swell. Both are negotiations to be free. Both are a kind of living done full well. The Viking farmer fights the frost and stone and earns his bread from cold and dark alone. He cleared the forest with an axe all spring. He pulled the roots until his shoulders ached. He burned the stumps and let the ash do its thing, and planted barley in the ground he'd raked. The first year failed, the frost came hard and late. He planted again without a word of grief. The second year the harvest filled the gate and gave the longhouse winters full relief. The farmer who persists through 2 bad years deserves the harvest that the 3rd year bears. planting time and harvest date. He read the geese migration, calibrating the season's mood, the coming frost and fate. The same sky that the sailor used for steering, the farmer used for knowing when to sow. The same wind that the Viking raider fearing told him which way the winter grain would grow. The sky is one great calendar for all, for those who plant and those who rise and fall. From the fallen oak, he cut the turf and laid it thick for roof. He carved the doorpost runes to ward off smoke, and made the threshold strong enough for proof. Inside the cattle shared the winter space, their bodies warming what the fire missed. The children slept among them without grace, and woke with straw in hair and cattle kissed. The farmer's longhouse holds the world entire, both man and beast, together near the fire. So honor to the ones who did not sail, the ones who stayed and fed the ones who went, whose belly filled the ships with bread and ale, whose labor was the raiders' full descent. Without the farmer there is no longship built, no crew well fed, no winter stores to spare. The raiders' fame is built on someone's tilt of ground they never left to bold elsewhere. The stone and root feed every iron sword. The farmer is the Viking's true reward. He casted over all of them at dawn the spear that never misses, never bends. Before the first great war had ever born, before the battle's chaos starts or ends, Gungnir flew above the Vanir host, a single throw to open up the war. And Odin claimed the sacrifice the most, a right of blood and iron nevermore. When Gungnir flies, the war has been declared. When Odin throws, no enemy is spared. The dwarves who made it carved the runes along the ashwood shaft that held the iron head. Each symbol was a promise, true and strong, that what was thrown would find its mark instead. No shield deflects it, no prayer turns it wide. No fog or darkness hides the target's face. It flies through every barrier and side, and finds the thing it seeks in any place. Gungnir is the word that must be kept, the oath that cannot sleep once it has slept. We threw our own spears over enemies, a ritual echo of the All-Father's throne, a declaration older than the seas, that we belong to Odin, high and low. The spear above the battlefield meant this, that every soul who falls today is his, that Odin watches from his cloudy bliss, and gathers what this mortal struggle gives. To throw the spear is to accept the cost, that some who fight today are already lost. Old Magnus never missed a single throw, from 50 paces on a windless day. From 30 on a gale he'd let one go, and strike the mark before it flew away. He said the spear knows where it needs to land, that you just have to trust the iron's will. You aim the heart and open up the hand, and let the spear find what it wants to fill. The thrower trusts the spear as Odin does, and what must find its mark always, because when I am old and cannot lift a blade, when knees have grown too stiff for charging run, I'll still pick up a spear and not be afraid, and throw it once more toward the setting sun. Not at an enemy, not at a mark, but as a gesture to the God above, a declaration into the growing dark, that I was here, that I had fought with love. Gungnir flies as long as arms are strong, and the old spear thrower still belongs. They said old Halvard spoke the language of wind, that he could read the sky like written rune, that when the clouds grew heavy, dark and thin, he'd stand the prow and negotiate the boom. He'd raise both arms and speak in something old, a tongue the other sailors didn't know. a language that the north wind understood. Cold, a dialogue between a man and flow. The storm singer hears what no one else can hear, the voice of wind that keeps the long ship clear. The other sailors watched him on those nights when lightning split the sky in jagged white. He stood unwavering through all the heights and seemed to argue with the storm's own might. Sometimes the storm would soften on his word. The waves would settle just enough to steer. Sometimes the gale would let itself be heard and part a path through what had been unclear. The storm and Halvard had an old accord, made long before he ever held an oar. He learned it from his mother on the shore, who learned it from her father on the sea, who found the words inside a dream and more, and passed them on so they would never flee. The words were not for writing or for page. They lived inside the breath and not the bone. They had to be passed living age to age, a gift transmitted, never given alone. The storm singer's knowledge lives in breath and passes mouth to mouth from birth to death. When Halvard felt his final winter near, he called his youngest grandchild to his side, a girl of 8 with iron eyes and clear, who watched the sea with something close to pride. He spoke the old words slowly in her ear and made her say them back until they stuck, until the rhythm lived inside her sheer, until the wind itself had changed its luck. The storm singer chose a girl to carry on, for wind respects the voice it wants to spawn. Now she stands where Halvard used to stand, the youngest storm singer the north has seen. She raises both her small but certain hands and speaks the gale into a calmer scene. The sailors old enough to have known him watch her with the same respect they gave before. They see in her small frame the light and grim the storm singers who came before. The storm singer lives as long as someone speaks the ancient tongue the endless north wind seeks.
The sky with iron wings outspread, the blood eagle carved in stone above the gate, a sign to all who pass that here the dead were honored men who chose a worthy fate. No softer death was asked by those who fell, no quiet passing in a feather bed. They wanted blades and storm and battle's yell, and got exactly that before they bled. The blood eagle soars above the brave and marks the difference between man and slave. Young Bjorn was 16 when he met the field. Too young, the elders said, too green to go. But Bjorn had never once been known to yield, and put his name down in the raiding row. He fought beside his father on the right. He held the flank when other men had run. He stood until the final breath of light, and earned a scout's full verse before he's done. Age is not the measure of the brave. The young who stand are worth the oldest name. We built the pyre at the edge of shore, where sea spray mixed with smoke and morning air. We laid the fallen out in battle's lore, with sword and shield and raven in their hair. The flames rose high and cracked against the dawn. The sparks flew up like stars returning home. We stood in silence till the fire was gone, then raised our cups across the salted foam. What iron could not break, and sends the brave forward for glory's sake. The eagle watches from the mountain height, its yellow eye recording every deed. It circles slow between the dark and light, and carries names that warriors plant like seed. One day that seed will grow to something great, a saga longer than the winter night. outlast the storm, and keeps a warrior never quite alone. So raise the blood eagle above your hall. Let every visitor who passes see that those who lived here answered honor's call, and chose their death as boldly as the free. We do not mourn the ones who fell in stride, we mourn the ones who never chose to rise. The blood eagle is the warrior's pride, a final claim beneath the northern skies. Let it spread its wings above your gate, and tell the world you chose a warrior's fate. They mix the mead from Caesar's wisest blood. The man so wise no question stumped his tongue. The dwarves who killed him stirred the crimson flood with honey sweet and magic, old and young. Whoever drinks this mead becomes a skald, a poet filled with wisdom deep as wells, a voice that cannot be ignored or stalled, that breaks all chains and every silence fells. The mead of poetry is hard to find, but one sip opens up the deepest mind. Odin came in disguise to earn the brew. He worked 9 days for Baugi with his blade. He bored through stone with Rati boring through, and slid inside the mountain where it stayed. 3 nights with Gunlord in the mountain's heart. He drank 3 draughts that emptied every vat, then turned to eagle, spread his wings apart, and carried all the meat through this and that. Odin stole the words that gods had made, and gave them freely, never once afraid. He flew back home with Suttung in pursuit, 2 eagles racing through the morning sky. He spat the mead and landed at the root of Asgard's gate before his throat ran dry. The poets of the world receive their share, the skalds and singers, those with gift of tongue, and those who speak the truth beyond compare were touched by what the All-Father had run. Poetry stolen fire from above, a gift that Odin gave the world with love. I felt the need the first time words came right, when everything aligned to form a verse, when language bent and blazed and burned like light, and said the thing I'd struggled to disperse. It was not me who made the poem then. Something older poured itself through bone, the mead of Gazir flowing once again through someone standing lucky and alone. The skull is just the vessel for the brew. The mead of poetry pours itself through you. So drink tonight not only mead of grain, but drink the deeper cup of honest word. Let every verse you sing fall without shame. Let every true thing spoken be well heard. The poets are the memory of the age, the ones who hold the dead inside their song, who turn the battlefield into a page and make the brief and mortal last lifelong. Drink the mead of poetry and sing. Give death no silence. Give the living spring. Ships set out before the dawn. The sea turned black with hulls from shore to shore. Each dragon prow was carved and battle-worn. Each sail was filled with hunger, cold and more. The enemy on the cliffs above could see a moving darkness swallowing the gray. A tide of iron rolling wild and free that would not be turned back or held at bay. The Viking tide is older than all fear, and once it rolls it does not disappear. We beached 10,000 keels on foreign sand. The sound of grinding hulls became a roar.
10,000 axes lifted every hand. 10,000 voices shook the eastern shore. The horses panicked on the cliffs above. The watchfires lit and ran from post to post. But no amount of warning was enough for what arrives when Vikings make their boast. The beach is ours before the sun is high. The tide of iron has already run dry. We did not come to stay forever here. We came to take and trade and push the line, to show the world that nothing they hold dear is safe from those who sail the northern brine. Some settled, yes, and built and bred and grew, and made their children half of somewhere new, and gave their grandkids both the old and new, a blend of north and south mixed through and through. The Viking tide leaves something where it breaks, a mark on every shore that time not takes. The chronicles they wrote about us then were full of fire and fear and darkest dread. They called us heathens, monsters, godless men, who came like storms and left a world half dead. But we were more than what their fear described. We were explorers, traders, builders too. We were the ones who could not be prescribed a single shape, a single limiting view. History is written by those we scared, but truth lives in the ones who always dared. The tide of iron rolled and then receded, the long ships thinned and fewer took to sea. The world they shaped was slowly superseded by different powers, different ways to be. But in the blood of those whose names still ring, in every stubborn soul who won't sit still, in every sailor, fighter, wandering king, the iron tide is rolling, rolling still. The Viking tide runs deeper than the sea. It flows in every heart that chose the free. Ask me where the Viking spirit went, when long ships stopped and churches filled the north, when the old gods were given up and spent, I say it never left, it changed its coat. It put on different cloth and walked ahead. It lives in every stubborn man and throat, who follows where the restless blood has led. The Viking spirit does not need a ship. It lives in every brave and lasting grip. It lives in those who sail the modern sea, in scientists who push the edge of known, in those who climb the peak to feel the free, in those who forge a path where none have gone. It lives in those who question every wall, who will not let the comfortable suffice, who hear the old horizon's ancient call, and pay whatever is the asking price. The Viking is the one who will not stop, who climbs the impossible to reach the top. The long ships are gone, but the sea remains, the same grey water that our fathers crossed, the same cold wind, the same demanding rains, the same dark deep where everything is tossed. And somewhere on that water every night, a sailor feels the old blood stir and pull toward a horizon burning out of sight, toward something just beyond the empty hull. The sea remembers every Viking oar, and calls the same blood forward evermore. I am the love, I am the love, I am the love, I am the love. I am the last of nothing and the first of everything that Viking blood began. I carry in my chest the ancient thirst for what lies past the furthest edge of man. I will not sit inside the quiet hall while something vast is waiting to be known. I will not stop until I've heard the call of every wind I've never seen or sown. The last horizon moves as you approach, and that is why the brave are never coach. So raise the final cup to all who sailed, to all who swung the axe and held the line, to all who tried and sometimes even failed, but kept on living with their hands in brine. To those who carved their names in foreign stone, to those who found new worlds and called them home, to those who faced the dark night all alone, and chose to sail it rather than not roam. Beyond the last horizon something waits, and Viking hearts will always find its gate.